So this is the situation at the end of turn 1. The American player has thrown one of the rifle groups forward to the stone wall in the bottom right and is engaged in a rather inconclusive firefight with the German sections moving up. Both sides are taking pin marker each, but not achieved a lot there. The American player has moved other ones up in the centre, trying to take the wood, and on the right flank the American player has really thrown a section forward using multiple activations to get into a good fire position against the German platoon, which hasn't had enough time to move up on its left flank. Before anybody comments, I know the markers are NATO and Russian. I haven't actually bought any for this yet because I've only just started playing it, and I also appreciate the figures aren't painted. I only got them yesterday, based them, undercoated them. You'll see the figures will gradually get painted as this series goes on. Turn 2, and from the American side on the left flank, the firefight went decidedly the German way. Having had the initiative, the German player started putting fire down. The American player, having inflicted a couple of pin markers, decided to do a fallback manoeuvre to get rid of the ones that were accumulating on theirs. In the centre, the Americans pushed further forward towards the wood, whereas the Germans crossed the bocage hedge and actually got a stand into the wood. On the American right flank, the exposed team forward at the tree line engaged the Germans in the open, putting pin markers down. German player returned fire rather ineffectively and tried to use some of the other activations to try and get into cover. It is noticeable there are stands on both sides that haven't actually activated. This does seem to happen a lot in this game. Turn 3 saw the American left flank keep in position and try and remove pin markers. Centre moved up again very cautiously towards the central wood, and on the right flank there's an exchange of fire. More pins were inflicted on the German player, but the concentrated firepower eliminated the American stand. The German section in the wood actually ended up falling back. Looking at the numbers coming at it, they decided it was probably not a good plan to stay there. They also had to refuse the right flank, where the number of pins accumulating on that unit was getting very high, so they fell back to try and remove some. Slowed by bad rolls, the American advance in the centre through the wood didn't get too far. On the American left flank, having started to win the firefight, the American player got a little overconfident, added a second section in, didn't achieve the number of pins that they expected to with German rallying attempts. On the right flank, another unit was thrown forward to try and hit the exposed German units in the open, who used some of their command points to get into cover, although accumulating a few more pins in the meantime. So turn 5, the American left flank was fairly inconclusive firefight, with both sides having to use command points to bring down their number of pins. In the centre, the Americans didn't have enough command points to move everybody forward in the woods, so threw 2 units forward but keeping them out of sight. And on the right flank, the firefight put down a couple more pin markers but didn't achieve much other than that. German player trying to gradually work his troops forward under fire. Notice that one of the German command stands at the rear hasn't actually had any points allocated to it all game yet. This really does make you think which units are your priority. This is the turn where it all went wrong for the Americans. On the right flank, a section was again destroyed by concentrated German firepower, and the final section on the right was thrown forward to try and bridge the gap. In the centre, the Americans used marching fire to come to the edge of the wood and engage. inflicting quite a few pins on the Germans. If you notice, one of them has actually had to fall back twice to the next hedgerow and still has pin markers left on it. Unfortunately, the German return fire did actually inflict massive losses on the American player. On the left flank, the group behind the wall again put fire down. They actually inflicted quite a few of the pins on the German section, which very, very nearly broke. This turned out to be the final turn of the game. Very, very nasty firefight ensued, with the American player using the winning initiative and keeping winning roll-offs to really pour fire in on the German sections. You can see the sheer number of pin markers. German return fire was really hammered by this because of the penalty for each pin marker, but they did, by combining the fire, hit the American section at point blank range and just accumulate enough morale tokens to destroy it. Now, when you actually finish a turn, a mechanism is you add up the number of breakpoints that you've lost. In this game it worked out as 3 for all of the infantry sections and 5 for a command stand, and then a 6-sided dice was added to that total, and if that exceeds the 60% of what you started with, then your force withdraws. So it was a lot closer than it looks points wise on this, because the German sections are in a terrible state. So, end of game 1 with the first draft of the rules. And how did it go? Well, we got the turns down to about 15 minutes towards the end, with a fair bit of interplay between the two of us. My half Chris is no wargamer. She plays the odd game to humour me, and she grasped that mechanism quite happily, probably by about the end of the third turn, and I feel that's probably the most complex aspect of the game to grasp. So that aspect works very well. The command and control, I think I'm really happy with. One thing I wasn't happy with was the firefight rules. They do reflect really well the fact that you have to win the firefight. If you try and move in the open, you will suffer. Once you start getting the pin markers, your fire is reduced, and your chance of moving is reduced. It really is important that you can win the firefight. I think I made it too easy for the Germans to do that. With having 3 dice to the American 2, it meant that they dominated in firefights. 50% higher is probably too much. I think that I'll probably need to up the American dice to 3 or lower the German to 2, one or the other, so they're on the same sort of dice at most ranges, and probably change the bonus. So the Germans will have a slight edge to suit their style of fighting. The Americans will have the walking fire, so they can actually get that move and firing. I think that will work better. The pin markers, I think, are a great mechanism. They work really well. The only problem I had at the minute is it was too easy to remove them, and I think what I need to do is to look at that without making it too frustrating, where it just bogs down into a firefight. Pin markers accumulate, nobody moves. So I need to look at that. But we got a good fast game in. It took about an hour and a half to play through, which for platoon via platoon, I think I'm quite pleased with. So the rules are working, I think, to a degree. They need tweaking, they always will. I'd like to hear your comments. Please chuck them in the comments below. I hope you find it useful, and I look forward to seeing you again for the future developments of the game. See you soon.